Alright, what's going on, everybody? Real Deal here, and I kind of got a different style video for you today. It's not a short video, it's not a stream. I'm just trying something different here, mainly because I don't want to do too much editing for a top 10 games list of 2020. But yeah, so I thought I'd break down a little bit more, less focused than my usual videos where I basically read off a script and stuff, and just discuss my top 10 games of this year, 2020. And yeah, let me know how you think this video works out. I'm sure it probably would have been a more interesting, like, edited video like I usually do, but then I have to get footage for all of these games that I played, and that means reinstalling a lot of crap. But yeah, so I thought this year was pretty solid overall. There wasn't like a bunch of like masterpieces, you know, or just stuff that I would rate super high on the scale. But it is very like deep with like good to solid games. And like honestly, like this list, there's probably like 15-20 games that maybe could have fought for the 10th spot or 9th spot. But they didn't make it. So for stuff like Warzone, I really liked early in the year, but I haven't done much since. And the Grand Blue fighting game, like I enjoyed that, but I haven't gone back to it since, and stuff like that. Then Doom Eternal, just to kind of tease you a bit with what's on or not on the list. Just games that just didn't crack the list. And some of the games where I just never got around to playing them, like Trails of Cold Steel 4, which was on like my top 3 most anticipated games coming into this year, and just because of when it released, I never got a chance to play it this year, which really stinks because it probably would have been high on this list in all likelihood, but I never got to play it. I'm going to probably starting in January, since there's a little bit of a lull for a little bit. But stuff like that, just games that I haven't played or gotten around to playing and stuff, just didn't make the list. So now I got that caveat out of the way. Let's get to it. And this is my written blog, which hasn't gone up yet, but will at pretty much around the same time as this video. Yeah, number 10, Monster Train. Oh, I kind of teased the next one. I shouldn't do that. Number 10 is Monster Train. Cool, just unexpected game that came out middle of the year, and usually one game per year. There's usually one game per year where I'm like looking for a kind of a strategy, like a strategy kind of game that makes me think a little bit, but isn't very heavy on like being involved in the gameplay. And Monster Train was a really good option for that this year. It's the deck building kind of genre, and I thought it was just really well done. It's got a lot of like easy to understand systems, but once you kind of get more into it, there's a lot to like play around with and experiment with. And even since the last time I've played it, they've added a lot of content to the game and new abilities and cards and stuff like that. But it's a fun deck builder. And if you liked, what was that one game? I am completely blanking on it. What is it called? Slave Aspire. Then you'll definitely probably like Monster Train. Yeah, I thought it was a really solid game for this year, and it's basically a big chunk of my streams for the middle chunk of June and July and stuff. But yeah, Monster Train number 10 just cracks into the list. But a nice little indie surprise from this year. Number 9, we'll go to a much bigger game, and Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I wrote this in my blog, but if you would have told me earlier, like coming into 2020, that this game wouldn't be in my like top 3, I'd kind of find it hard to believe. But with everything that's happened since release and just the way the game has launched, it didn't meet expectations, and that's something I thought could potentially be the case, because you see it a lot. I mean, the game, I think a lot of people were expecting it to be, one of the best games of the past decade, and it had the potential, but obviously it just didn't deliver. That said, all the problems or anything, that's another story. And as somebody who's playing the PS4 version on PS5, I haven't really been too bothered by issues. There's obviously a lot of issues, and the game crashes almost every single time I play it, and stuff like that, and just weird, stupid bugs and animations and stuff. But it hasn't been broken for me. But everything surrounding the game is definitely a huge negative against it. But just as a game, I think it goes to show how much potential and like talent there is at CD Projekt Red, that they can deliver a game that obviously doesn't meet the high expectations, but it's still, even in its really broken state, a good game. I've had a lot of I've probably played like 30 hours of the game at this point, and I've really liked it. It's in my top 10 of this year, even though I haven't beaten it yet. But it has a lot of good things going for it. The world's really cool, and it's a world you don't really see much in games. They have more sci-fi take, and just built around it, this huge city. And some of the elements of the story are interesting, and side quests. It doesn't reach Witcher 3 levels of like really great side content, but I think the world's just great, and it has a lot of good things going for it. It has a pretty deep RPG systems and all that. Even though it tries to be like a GTA game, probably too much at times, but it has a lot of good things going for it. It's just a shame that it didn't live up to its hype. Maybe once we get to like midway through 2021 and they patch the thing to hell and the next gen versions come out, it can reach closer to what we expect. But right now, still a good game if you can be able to play it, really. But yeah, I've enjoyed my time with the game, but it's a disappointment, but still a solid game, I think. Number 8, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 Remastered. There's not really much to say, honestly, about it. It's just like a really solid remake of those first 2 games, and it was just like a fun time to revisit those nostalgia, the nostalgia that I have for those games. They're still fun to play, even though like I really haven't gotten back to it like I thought I would over and over. But it plays well. It's probably the best Tony Hawk game we've gotten in a long time, and it's just like I said, a really good nostalgia fix for people who played those games during the PlayStation 1 era. And it just goes to show how that formula is pretty timeless if you can do it correctly. But yeah, it cracks number 8 on this list. Not gonna wow most people, but it's just a good time for when you do play it. 7, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Valhalla is an interesting game because, as much as I guess I'm playing like some game radio music in the back, so just expect some random music sometimes. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, honestly, it's a downgrade from Odyssey in my opinion, but it has some really interesting ideas. like the way you explore. I do like how they have the mysteries, the loot areas, and just the sites or something, whatever it was, where you don't really know what you're getting into when you're exploring. Besides, like, hey, this is where you get an item, or this is where you get like a side story. But I do enjoy how they did that, and a lot of those like mysteries, like I've probably did like over 50, like 40 or 50 of them in my time with the game, and most of them are pretty like they might have the same kind of styling where like, hey, go investigate this area or whatever, but the stories that they tell are all pretty different, which is kind of impressive. Instead of being like a, hey, side story again where you go tail this person. So I do respect that, but I think other parts of the game just didn't really interest me. Like the RPG aspects of the game, just like, like you get these weapons and armor and stuff, and it just, you get them and maybe upgrade them, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm just using these weapons for now, like, and for the rest of the game. It doesn't really have an RPG aspect that Odyssey had, where you're getting new items all the time, and you're getting kind of cool boosts to gameplay and stuff like that. It's just really limited in that aspect. Even though the abilities and stuff like that in this game are pretty interesting and cool. But overall, just the game is a consistent level of quality. There's not many highs or lows in this game, which is good, but it just doesn't reach super high heights at any one time. The story just remains consistently the same level of interest, and I've put over 50 hours into the game, and I still haven't really beaten any of the quests, and I don't really feel very compelled to finish some of them because it hasn't really fully clicked with me, and I pretty much have finished every mainline Assassin's Creed game, and at this point I don't really feel compelled to finish it, but it's still a good game. So yeah, I don't know, I had higher expectations for it, but it's still like a solid game that has some good ideas that I think they can expand on the next entry, and hopefully take some more inspiration back from like Odyssey and stuff like that, since they want it to be an RPG series, make it more of a RPG again. But it's a cool game, solid like kind of launch title if you played it, and it looks solid. Didn't really have too many issues or bugs, so really really solid Assassin's Creed title, even though it doesn't reach very high on my list for the series. Alright, number 6. We got Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let me get some water here. The original Final Fantasy VII, I dabbled numerous times with, because I didn't have a memory card for my PlayStation 1, so really it was just like however long I could play the game was how deep I got into it, until one day when I got a memory card and I didn't ever play the game. So really I only ever got to like where you meet up with Aerith or Eris, whatever you want to call her name. So this being my really first time like kind of playing through that game, it was it's number 6 on my list. I really enjoyed it. Not perfect. I think people really give this game a lot of bonus points where it doesn't deserve it. Just because it has a huge budget, and like to get a JRPG with this big of a budget, it doesn't happen really ever. And honestly, it's only the first third of the game, so it's a really odd game just in its atmosphere and some of the missions and stuff you do in it, which I think adds a lot of personality to it. But this is a game unlike Valhalla, where there is a lot of highs and lows, and it's just kind of like determines like how much of the highs there are in the game for you compared to lows. And for me, there's definitely more highs, but it has some negative aspects to it. But the combat system, more I think back on it, I really kind of like how it is. I think it's a good balance between the action and what the game was originally, and the way you get equipment and stuff like that, and you get abilities from investing in kind of like new weapons and stuff is cool, and interested to see how that is expanded on in the future parts of the remake. But for a game with that amount of budget, it's excuse me, should be that good, and it was a really solid, good game this year. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are gonna talk your head off about a game, so I won't. But I kind of was looking into that game, expected to not really enjoy it, but I did end up kind of liking that game a fair bit. So, especially like when they got more of the side characters involved, like Jesse and Biggs and Wedge and stuff. That was a good, solid like part of the game. And it kind of goes off the rail towards the end, and I don't really know much about it, but fun game either way. 5, got Marvel Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of more Marvel Spider-Man from 2017, which is like a good thing, but doesn't really change it up all that much besides a new character. And like I do like the kind of the messages and tone and mood of this game, where it's more of a Miles kind of community story and family story. But most things around that are pretty much the same, but still just really fun to swing around New York, and I do like how it's set during Christmas time. It just sets a good mood for, right now, kind of around that period and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just a really good kind of spin-off slash kind of expansion, and tells a solid story. Has a really good boss fight towards the end. Yeah, I'm just really enjoyed the game. It's not very long. It's like 7 to 8 hours. But that's kind of all I wanted. Another kind of new experience in that world, and it just makes you more excited to see what we do with the sequel. Because now we got 2 Spider-Men to kind of build around that are both interesting and well done for the most part. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And it's a really good launch title for a PS5, even though it's on PS4 and stuff. But yeah, fun, just a fun, quick game compared to a lot of these bigger games that came out later in the year. So really enjoyed it. 4, we got The Last of Us Part 2. I know this is going to be a game of the year for a good chunk of people. And when I first finished it, I mean, it was probably my game of the year or close to it. But it's not a game I really thought much about since then. And it has a lot of good things going for it. Like you don't get games like The Last of Us Part 2 really all that much besides from Naughty Dog, where you have just this level of quality and like environments and just the way the game looks and story and narrative and stuff. But I don't know if I loved everything they did with it. without spoiling anything, but it has some really great moments in it, and there's some nice twists and stuff like that, but pacing wise it has some problems in my opinion. I think it goes on for about 6 hours, like too long, because it's a long ass game for what it is. But I don't know what I would really cut from the game. That's kind of the problem. But it goes on for a lot longer than you thought it would. And that's kind of my main problem. It just drags on a little long, even though it has some good elements towards the end. But gameplay I mostly enjoyed, even though it's kind of the same. And Ellie's story definitely makes you think, and there's like parts in the game like near the middle-ish and near towards like the 80% mark that really offer some thought-provoking moments. And there's a point nearish the end where the game makes you do, like, it's basically the game pushes you to do something. I personally just was like, I don't really want to be doing this, but I kind of have to, and you don't get that often from games. It knows how to make you uncomfortable, but in a way that I can respect, and not like, oh, okay, this is like really bad, you know. Yeah, it just never reaches the masterpiece level that I think some people are giving it, which I can understand it, but for me, it didn't reach, you know, oh my god, the amazing game kind of level. But it made, I can understand why they made a sequel now though. Even though I was kind of on the fence with them doing it, but I think it doesn't sully the first game at all, and does a solid job of continuing that quality for the most part. Number 3, we have Ghost of Tsushima. Kind of was surprised by how much I ended up enjoying this. Not because I had low expectations, just I didn't expect it to get its hooks in me as much as it did. Even though it wasn't like a revolutionary open world game, it had some really good ideas to it, which I made a video about, talking about the open world design. It was actually my first video. But I know I wrote this in my blog, but it's kind of interesting how in a year where we got an Assassin's Creed title, Ghost of Tsushima is probably the better Assassin's Creed game this year. And that's not saying Valhalla is bad, but Ghost of Tsushima is just a lot better, and it's pretty close to being at the top of this list. Like, this top 3 here are really close together for the most part. But it just falls down to 3, because just barely, but it just has a little bit less going for it. Overall though, combat was a lot of fun once you kind of develop it a little bit more. And I think the top thing about this game is the open world is just amazing. Like, just every moment you kind of just can breathe in the environment and just absorb the scenery. And like I think I've, like, people have said this before, but every like time you stop, it's like a screenshot worthy moment, because every aspect of that world is just like so lively and like and memorable for the most part. And the game just does a good way of pushing that sort of forefront, where this is about how great this world is, how great this world is at feeling alive, even though the gameplay part of stuff feels very traditional and stuff like that, and isn't overly alive. And as far as the narrative goes, it has some really solid moments, even though it doesn't completely hit every single aspect of it. But it gets me super excited to see what a Ghost of Tsushima 2 or Ghost of Japan or whatever they do next would be like, because definitely I could see a huge jump from, even though Ghost of Tsushima is really good, really good, a sequel has a lot of potential to be like great, if they can improve on some elements. But Ghost of Tsushima is number 3. Like I said, tight race for these last couple spots. I think once you get up pat like 3 and down, or if you cut off after 3, there's kind of a gap between Ghost and Last of Us for me. And then, so basically, what I'm trying to say is Ghost and the rest of these games are like a step above most of these other games for me this year. Yeah, so now we're going to number 2, and we got Hades. Now, Hades is a game first started playing in like December of 2019 because it was on sale and it came to Steam and stuff like that. And basically, I played it throughout December and January, and like really thought it was a lot of fun. And I'm like, why aren't more people talking about this game? And I've touched back on the game multiple times throughout this year, and it just got better and better and better. And finally, once it fully released, people gave the game the respect that I've been trying to like say, hey, this game's really damn good. And now it's up there with a lot of Game of the Year lists. And I think it's won a couple of them already. But Hades, it's just like the best roguelite I've played. It just has a great way of like building upon each run, both in a gameplay sense and with its story. And I think the story aspect and narrative is what sets it apart from most of our roguelites. It doesn't like ignore it or just kind of reset it after each time you die. It like just, like I said, builds upon it and expands and makes it a like ongoing story throughout. And it's just a lot of fun action. The way you can experiment with different builds the more you get into the game. And it looks great. Has great writing. It's just probably the most well-balanced game of the year in my opinion, where it has very little flaws, if any, for me. If not for the number 1 game, and it might be, I had a fight with myself between Hades and my number 1 game, just because of the number 1 game being let's just say not being the freshest game of the year. So Hades was very close to being the top spot, just because it is the new game, let's just say. But it sets in at number 2, but it's a great game, and it's my favorite Supergiant game. It deserves all the Game of the Year recognition it gets, and yeah, you should play that game. And now we're going to number 1, my Game of the Year for 2020. Let me get a drink of water, then we'll talk about it. Game of the Year 2020 goes to Persona 5 Royal. So this feels kind of like shading because depending on your thoughts, this isn't really a brand new game. And it was my 2017 Game of the Year. Actually, did I say Spider-Man was 2017? I meant 2018. Anyways, it was my 2017 Game of the Year over Breath of the Wild and Nier and all that. But it's going to be one of my Game of the Year for 2020 as well. And Persona 5 Royal just has a lot of new content, and that's spread out throughout even the main campaign. Even though it's not a completely different story, it adds enough like new elements to the gameplay and systems and stuff like that into the story where the new characters are introduced, where it's worth replaying the game. And then you get this huge 20-hour chunk of new content towards the end. that has a lot of great moments in it. Even though this game took me, it came out in like March 31st or something, and since that point, it's been like a regular game in my rotation where in between the other big games like Ghost and Last of Us and stuff like that, it's been my main game, and it took me until November to beat it. So it's a huge ass game. It's like 140 hours, 50 hours I put into the freaking game. But it really helped me through this year because of how much I love these characters and this story, and just it felt like I was reconnecting with these friends I had from 2017 and all that, but I got even more, I learned even more about them through the new content. It has some just absolutely great moments. I mean, Royal just solidifies Persona 5 as like one of my favorite games of all time. No doubt about it. And I just absolutely love the experience. It's a shame that it's so much of a time investment that people are just like, nope, not doing that. I don't care. Like, even though it'd probably be a really special experience for a lot of those people. So yeah, wish more people would play it. That's kind of my main problem, is it doesn't get the respect it deserves this year because people don't think it's a new game. But even though it has like 30 hours of new content in it, which is more than like a lot of these games on this list, people are just not giving it the credit it deserves. But it's my game of the year. It's a fantastic game. Yeah, I love it. Love Persona 5 Royal. Yeah, so that is Persona 5 Royal, my game of the year for 2020. So yeah, really looking for. I wonder what like Persona 6 is gonna be like. We're probably still like 5 years away from that, especially since they kind of redid their teams a bit at Atlas for that. But that's another story. But if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, share, or subscribe. Let me know if you kind of like this more lengthy video compared to my 10-minute-ish edited stuff. And I'm going to try to stream a little bit more since I haven't been the last couple months. But I'm trying to find this middle ground content. And hopefully this was a good test, even though it's probably still like half an hour, 35 minutes long. But thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know what your favorite games of the year were. I'll probably put together another video discussing my most anticipated games for next year, or heading into next year, because it looks like a pretty solid year to begin with. Some early games early on that I'm looking forward to, like Persona 5 Scramble and stuff like that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.